A very warm welcome to IDFC First Bank presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 11. I'm Nitin Gupta. Tonight we have two insightful conversations lined up, centered around energy and sustainability. In the first segment, we'll be focusing on eco-friendly methods of electronic waste management in a conversation with Nitin Gupta, CEO and co-founder of Attero. And in the second segment, Anant Badjatya, CEO of Sun Mobility, will be sharing his thoughts on battery swapping, EVs in India, and much more. Joining me live right now is Nitin Gupta, CEO and co-founder of Attero. Hi, Mr. Gupta. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting us, Ritvika. Appreciate being here.
So to begin with, for our viewers, who may not know, tell us a little bit about what Attero does and what essentially your business is all about.
So Attero is a deep tech company with a very strong focus on sustainability. As a company today, we have more than 38 granted global patents on recycling technology developed by us in India. The patents are across the world: China, Taiwan, Singapore, other parts of Asia, including India, US and Europe, and many more applied for. We're also the only recycling company in the world focusing on electronic waste and lithium-ion battery, which gets carbon credits per ton of waste produced or recycled, let's say. And that has been, the methodology has been approved by the United Nations. As a company, we run two business units. One is focused on electronic waste recycling and the other is focused on lithium and battery recycling. We are by far the leaders in India in electronic waste recycling on any parameter that you look at, whether it's revenue, profitability, market share, wallet share across clients, sort of pick up across the country, logistics, reverse logistics, locations and so on and so forth, right? Or recycling capacity.
India produces around 2 million tons of e-waste annually, and this number is growing by 15% each year. What's your take on this? How can we reduce this?
So there are three aspects to this, Ritvika. First is reduce, reuse and recycle. All those three have to be looked at in conjunction, right? From a reduction standpoint, there are only so much that can be done from a reduction standpoint, right? Unfortunately or fortunately, the consumption of electrical and electronic gadgets is increasing, and that is bound to increase as consumerism increases, right? So as the consumption goes up, the end of life e-waste created will actually increase. Things that can be done to reduce this is to ensure that we have a better right to repair policy, we have more sort of reuse actions built in, and little bit less consumption mindset, right? Third one is a very, very difficult proposition. Having said that, assuming that whatever e-waste is produced, that e-waste should be recycled in an environmentally friendly manner to make sure that it does not pollute the atmosphere, and also that e-waste should be treated as a resource. Like in Attero's case, we extract pure gold, pure silver, pure palladium, pure copper, pure tin, pure aluminum that we put back in the circular economy. So we should create more and more technology and capacity around that as well.
And from what I've read, Attero is the only company in the world to receive carbon credits for e-waste recycling from the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Can you tell us more about this?
So essentially, in electronic waste, like you rightly said, Ritvika, we are the only company to extract or generate carbon credits per ton of e-waste recycled. That carbon credit methodology is approved by UNFCCC, and that is based on the amount of energy involved in Attero's process to extract, let's say, 1 ton of copper or 1 kilogram of gold or 1 kilogram of silver or 1 ton of tin and so on and so forth. That energy used is significantly lower than the energy used to extract the similar metal from either a virgin mine or any other secondary source of that material. And on that basis, our carbon credit methodology is approved, and we generate carbon credits based on the energy difference in Attero's process compared to mining or any other secondary producers of these metals today.
So the government's right to repair framework is expected to help reduce e-waste and boost business for small repair shops. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's an excellent framework, Ritvika. First of all, the very fact that the right to repair is being considered as a regulatory policy does help in reduction of overall e-waste that is generated. And like I said, the way that to look at it is from a reduce, reuse and then recycle perspective. In that perspective, it does fall under the category of reduce and reuse. And with this framework being properly implemented, the amount of e-waste being generated in India will definitely come down. Let's say, and when I say come down, it's all subjective, right? Let's say today India is generating 2 million tons of e-waste, growing at 15% year on year. With the right to repair policy, that 2 million tons number does not come down significantly. Only that growth rate of 15% gets delayed by a few years, right? Which is perfect from a overall country perspective, environmental perspective, and so on and so forth. Plus the very fact that small repair shops will get a boost in business. That's great for our economy.
And if you can also talk to us about some of the trends that are taking shape in the e-waste recycling sector.
So in India, there's a lot of regulatory push towards making sure that e-waste that is generated is recycled in the most environmentally friendly manner. Unfortunately, what was happening is till a few years ago, majority of the e-waste in India was being recycled in the informal, illegal, unscientific mechanism using cyanide, sulfuric acid, open burning of lead and so on and so forth, which was leading to a lot of water pollution, air pollution, and a whole lot of social and environmental challenges for the country, right? And just to give you some sense, the average age of people working in the illegal, unscientific e-waste recycling in India was less than 27 years because all of them were exposed to obnoxious sort of lead fumes, cyanide and other sort of end-of-life water aspects as well. So it was a pretty hazardous working environment, and that was causing a lot of problem. The government of India has tightened regulations pretty significantly and has introduced something called an EPR bill, or extended producer responsibility, under which companies who sell electrical and electronic products in the country are responsible for making sure they collect e-waste when it becomes end of life and is recycled in a scientific manner. So that regulation is sort of one aspect of how regulators are thinking about it. The second aspect of how regulators are thinking about it is when e-waste is recycled properly, there are certain amount of metals that can be extracted and put back into circular economy, right? So what is the impact of that metal flow back into the supply chain is a critical part of how the government and regulators are also thinking about it, right? So just to sum it up, one part of regulation is being driven to ensure that the waste that is created as part of e-waste and lithium-ion battery is handled in an environmentally friendly manner by putting the onus on the sellers of producers of let's say these goods, right, which is the EPR framework. The other set of regulations globally are talking more about how does this enhance circular economy and the entire supply chain benefits. And the third part is how can incentives be created for increasing capacity.
What are your thoughts on the future of electric vehicles and also lithium-ion battery recycling in India?
So electric vehicles are here to stay, they are here to grow. We are increasingly seeing, like I said, India is among the top two-wheeler EV vehicle markets in the world, and we are increasingly seeing greater adoption in four-wheelers as well. So the world is moving towards electric. India will definitely move towards electric. We are extremely bullish on electrification and the entire EV momentum that the country is gaining, and I think that's just here to stay, and we'll continue to see that grow. On lithium, India does not today have any sort of producing local reserves of lithium, so we are relying either on recycling or on importing lithium today. There have been some reserves that have been found in J&K and Rajasthan. Please remember that from the time the reserves are found to the time that those mines become online is minimum 4 years, if not more, right? And the fact remains that majority of refining today happens in China. Therein Attero's role is pretty predominant because our technology for recycling batteries from which we extract lithium carbonate can very well be used for refining mining output as well. And great times for everybody involved here.
So Leaders of Tomorrow in its 11th season has Ideas for New India as its theme. According to you, what are some of the big ideas that will shape India's e-waste recycling industry?
So a few big ideas. See, e-waste recycling or the general recycling industry in India is today at least a $20 billion opportunity. And it is growing significantly, at least at a 15% year-on-year growth phase, right? And there are various opportunities to make sure that the solutions that can be provided here are not only good for the environment, are good for the society, but good for the economy as well, right? So from a big idea perspective, the entire thesis around creating more capacity and becoming leaders in the world from a e-waste recycling perspective as well as battery recycling perspective is there. Internally, we are focused on making sure that we set up a 300,000 ton per annum capacity for battery recycling in the next 5 years, by which our objective is that we can at least meet 10% of the world's cobalt demand by recycled output. Remember, every single percentage of demand we meet by recycling basically displaces mining, and that has significant social and environmental impact. And that's what we're working on.
Well, it was great chatting with you, Mr. Gupta. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ritvika. Appreciate this.
It's time for a quick break here. We'll be back shortly. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 11. In conversation now with Anant Badjatya, CEO of Sun Mobility. Thank you, Anant, for joining us today on the show. So, Anant, to kickstart this conversation, tell us, how would you describe the current macro outlook for the EV sector in India? What are the key factors that make India a potential hub for the EV industry? Are there any notable trends or market conditions that are driving its growth?
So the macroeconomic outlook for EV sector in India is euphoric, if I may say so. In the sense, we are, if you will, breaking a barrier, inhibition, resistance. We are today the world's largest two-wheeler, three-wheeler automotive market in the world, and we are continuing to have that lead. In the last 7 to 8 months, we have consistently sold more than 100,000 EVs. And in June, if you look at it, we did around 700,000 EVs cumulative, which is almost 70 to 73% of what was sold in the last year. So the pace, the track is very, very good, and India continues to be dominating the EV sector in that sense. So very, very positive outlook. And if you think what are the key determinants for this euphoria, for this growth, I think India, apart from being the biggest market, we are talking about $500 billion market by 2030. India is going to be a $5 trillion market in few years' time, and automotive GDP is close to 8 to 10% of the GDP of India. And if EV is going to be a significant part of it, we're talking about a few $100 billion of market in the EV sector.
Talking about charging for electric vehicles, how do you think India can improve charging and pricing of EVs to make it available to the median income individual? And how much do you think customers will be willing to pay for public charging and home stations?
So I think we are just beginning. When we are graduating, asking or expecting people to graduate from ICE to EV, it's not only going to be for the pricing, it's also going to be for convenience, right? So we need to ensure that what people are used to refuel in 3 minutes, we cannot be expecting them to refuel or to charge for 15 to 20 minutes. So India needs a very, very wide, ubiquitous public charging network, right? And that's what needs to be done. So it's going to be very important. If you think about costing of the charge, if anybody who is doing a home charge and a two-wheeler, you're talking about 2 to 2.5 kilowatt hour per day, which is around 25 rupees, 20 to 25 rupees. For a car, when somebody's charging at home, 10 to 15 kilowatt hours, it's around 100 to 150 rupees per day, which is not an issue. But it becomes an issue when you're charging in the public spaces where the rate almost doubles to what is the home charging rate. So then it starts pinching. So that's where it's important that the grid is, that there is a very convenient, fast public charging network. And as the scale will grow, the pricing will come down. But we need to bring down those costs at the public charging spaces.
How do you see the impact of government policies and initiatives on the growth of the EV sector in India? Are there any specific policies or incentives that have contributed significantly to its development?
So the Indian government has worked really well towards pushing the EV agenda in India, right? So we are talking about FAME 2 policy, which has been a success. I think it has, what we see the numbers now with almost crossing 1 million units. So FAME 2 policy is working. Then we are talking about the PLI incentives. We are talking about, a lot of push from on the consumer side as well. On the cost of the registration cost removal, also the road tax removals. So all these things are helping a lot. They are delicensing the EV charging infrastructure. The government is directing and giving instructions and putting, infrastructure around malls and public spaces. So all these things are helping a lot in setting up the right infrastructure. Then all the state governments are working towards setting up EV policies across the country. Almost half of the states in India have come up with the EV policy. They're attracting, enticing investments in their states by giving tax benefits and power tariff cuts and all. So I think a lot of work is going on across the central government and state governments to push the EV agenda. And I think we see the fruit already in the numbers. There has been a serious increase in what we see in the last couple of years.
Anant, what is your perspective on the battery swapping market? Considering the government's efforts to implement a battery swapping policy that is being stalled by opposition from companies. And then on the other hand, you have introduced the SwapX compact battery swapping station and even collaborated with Zomato to provide a battery swap solution for, I think, 50,000 e-scooters. So what's your take on this?
So battery swapping has really taken off. I think it's fast becoming mainstream in India. If I talk about Sun Mobility, we have grown almost 2,000% in the last 15 to 18 months. We are doing almost 45,000 swaps a day. We are selling almost 45 kilowatt or megawatt of hours of energy per day now. So it's a huge change from what we were seeing maybe 18 months back. Battery swapping in effect actually hits at the base of 4 or 5 key issues which inhibits EV adoption. We are talking about high upfront cost, higher charging times, technology obsolescence, and network infrastructure. And all these things are effectively, when you take the battery out of the equation, all these, with battery swapping, you're reducing the upfront cost by almost 40%. There is no requirement for charging. And since you don't own the battery, there is no technological obsolescence. And the setting up of network infrastructure in battery swapping is much more faster and easier as compared to fixed battery. So we are seeing a lot of, traction in the market in the commercial segment, and now also slowly will be moving to the retail segment. The recent announcement with Zomato with 50,000 vehicles that we are going to put with them over the next 2 years is a case in point, because we did a very good pilot with Zomato with 50 vehicles where they realized that battery swapping is actually helping them increase their uptime a lot. And it also increases the daily earnings of the drivers. So that's from basis that we are going ahead with Zomato's pilot, Zomato's 50,000 vehicles, and we are also introducing this smaller charging swapping station called SwapX. It will actually democratize the swapping network that we have. You can actually think of the SwapX at every nook and corner in the city, in the country, in around 500 meters. It is a way of augmenting the income for anybody who's running a grocery shop or a pharmacy or anything without having to do any major investment. So I think with this, we can make the swapping infrastructure ubiquitous in the country, and we are hoping to start doing that very soon in the next quarters or so.
And are there any specific infrastructure requirements that need to be made to boost the EV space?
Absolutely. So when we are talking about the infrastructure requirements, when we are transitioning from petroleum to electricity, we need to see that we are upgrading our grid system. So we are talking about almost 150 to 200 gigawatt of requirement of energy from the grid by 2030. That will be one of the biggest user of the power at that time by 2030. Bigger than the steel companies and what you will. So it's important that we upgrade the grid network, maintain it, do what needs to be done to ensure that this grid is capable of supporting this EV need that they will be there. Not only the power generation capacity, also the distribution system distribution companies have to up their ante. So I think that's very, very critical in terms of the infrastructure requirement that needs to be done. Apart from that, I think setting up the EV infrastructure network, what government is trying to do with promoting, all the charge operators to ensure that they set up the network across the country is very critical. Today, India has around 75,000 petrol pumps across the country. To support the kind of EV system that we are looking at, we need many fold of those 75,000 petrol pumps to support this EV infrastructure and EVs on the road. So I think a lot of work needs to be done towards that as well.
Anand, the theme for our show this season is Ideas for New India. According to you, what are some of the innovative ideas or initiatives that can be implemented for the development of the EV sector in New India? How can these ideas help overcome existing barriers and, perhaps also boost adoption?
So, India has started any MMP, National Electric Mobility Mission Plan 2020, where it has allocated around 14,000 crores towards, development and R&D of, better technology, on better batteries. So I think that is very, very critical. We need to continue push towards better technology, smarter batteries, better batteries. That's very important. I think we need to work towards V2G, vehicle to grid infrastructure. We need to work towards smart charging, time to use charging. We need to work towards, renewable microgrids and community charging. So I think these are very many initiatives that the government and actually industry as a large, society as a large can take up to ensure that EVs overall, this EVs overall are a success.
Well, thank you, Anant. Those were some really insightful observations. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 11. We hope you enjoyed the conversations. Thank you and goodbye.